Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're zeroing in on a story that really speaks volumes about the American small town. Its deep historical roots, its modern economic struggle, and the relentless belief of a native son determined to revitalize his home.
That's right. We're diving into the sources shared by a listener, focusing on the mayoral candidacy of Tony Silver and his unique community-first vision for Enfield, North Carolina. Our stack includes his official announcement, detailed excerpts from his recent podcast interview, and the crucial economic and historical data that kind of frames the challenge he's facing.
Yeah, and our mission is to unpack this formula. It seems to be a mix of military discipline, hands-on construction know-how, and a pretty profound spiritual leadership. We want to see if that blend might be the key to unlocking new life in a community that's actually designated as one of the most distressed in the state. We should probably start with its history because, wow, Enfield has some serious pedigree.
It absolutely does, yeah. This isn't just any small town. It's the oldest town in Halifax County, founded way back in 1740. The records show it actually ties with Wilmington as the fifth oldest town in North Carolina.
That right there tells you this place was established during the colonial era, a critical hub back then. But what really stands out, I think, from the sources is the political significance. They mention the Enfield Riots of 1759.
Right. That fact is a genuine historical nugget. The sources explain these riots involved citizens, kidnapping a corrupt land agent and forcing him to return illegal fees. Historians actually consider this event a direct precursor to the Halifax Resolves, marking it as, arguably the very first act of resistance against British rule in that area. This town was literally a cradle of independence.
A hotbed of independence. And at one point, it seems, a nexus of wealth, too. Beyond its farming prowess, the sources say it was once famous as the world's largest raw peanut market. And here's a detail I loved. It was connected to George Eastman, the founder of Kodak. He visited his retreat there, Oak Lodge, 3 times a year, arriving right at the local train station.
Yeah, that suggests a level of, cachet and infrastructure that's kind of hard to imagine in a modern, struggling town.
That's the critical contrast, isn't it? It had the rail, the trade, the wealthy visitors.
But that critical mass, it just eroded. The sources paint a pretty stark picture of the decline, noting that, so many small towns, decades of disinvestment have really taken their toll. Population dropped sharply, nearly 27% just between 2010 and 2020. It shrank from over 2,500 down to just 1,865 residents.
That population figure, 1,865, that's really essential context for the massive economic problem they're trying to tackle. And that problem is actually formalized by the state, right?
Yeah.
Enfield is in Halifax County, which the state has designated as a Tier 1 community.
That's right. So the North Carolina Department of Commerce ranks all 100 counties, and Tier 1 counties are the 40 most distressed. They base it on metrics like unemployment, income, tax base. Now, this status, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It certifies the economic hardship, absolutely, but it also makes the town eligible for crucial state-level support and, targeted incentive programs.
Right.
Silver knows they have to leverage that status, but, the sheer scale of local spending just leaving the town is staggering.
So about that staggering figure, it involves a UNCC study, if I remember that right from the sources.
Yes, exactly. The town actually paid $10,000 for a study just to understand this economic leakage, and the results showed that Enfield is losing between $58 million and $60 million in spending annually.
Wow.
And that's just within a 10-mile radius.
$60 million. Let's pause on that for a second. To put that figure into perspective, for a town of under 2,000 residents, 1,865 to be exact. That means every single person in Enfield is, theoretically spending more than $30,000 a year outside of their immediate community.
That is the depth of the challenge right there. It really illustrates a total dependence on external economies. And Silver's campaign, it seems built on the premise that you have to fix the community's internal foundation first before you can successfully go after those external grants designed for a Tier 1 county.
Okay, let's turn to the candidate himself then. Tony Silver. His story is just woven into Enfield, but his profile is, remarkably diverse. He's a leader rooted in service and trades, which seems to give him a unique lens.
Yeah, his biography really provides an excellent foundation for a political leader focused on practical community revival. He served over 11 years in the U.S. Army. That was a period he credits with teaching him the discipline and commitment that really shaped his life. He actually noted in his interview that The trajectory of his life would be completely different without the military.
Right. You take that tested leadership, that ability to manage complexity under pressure, and you merge it with the tangible skills of a tradesman. He's a second-generation concrete worker, right?
Yeah, and the founder of Tony Silver Concrete Company, he's been running that business successfully for about 26 years.
So he's built things, in-ground pools, driveways, foundations. He is fundamentally a builder.
Exactly. He knows what it takes to construct something durable, from the ground up. And he's also been actively involved in civic life, served on the Enfield Planning and Zoning Board, the Housing Selection Committee. He actually called that service a grooming process for this mayoral run.
Interesting.
Yeah, and you add to that his role as a deacon in his church. He stresses that being spiritual and putting God first is really key to all his endeavors.
What's truly insightful, though, I think, is the philosophical shift he made that pushed him into running. He talks about realizing he had to stop asking, what can the town do, and start asking, what can I do?
That mindset shift is absolutely critical. It's the difference between waiting for government help and enacting community self-reliance. And he put that commitment into tangible action too, by rehabbing dilapidated properties in Enfield, making sure they were safe and livable spaces, he stresses, that he would live in myself. This commitment to radical localized action really seems to define his entire platform.
That level of personal investment brings us right to his community-first vision. He's running to restore pride, revitalize downtown, and create opportunities worth staying for. So let's look at the 4 core pillars that structure his plan.
Okay. The first pillar is the philosophy itself, community first. He defines it pretty simply as neighbors talking, families worshiping, and people working side by side.
Okay.
The second is revitalization and business growth. So that means outbound marketing, smart incentives, and small business partnerships, directly targeting that $60 million leakage we talked about.
Right, hitting that head on.
The third is collaboration and leadership. It's a recognition that they really can't go it alone. This means aligning Enfield with Halifax County leaders, churches, nonprofits, state programs, all of it.
Makes sense.
And the final pillar, kind of tying it all together, is a safe and vibrant future. A town where families thrive, businesses grow, and crucially, where children actually choose to stay. Now, if we connect that philosophical pillar, community first, to the economic one, business growth, we start to see how Silver approaches problem solving.
Yeah, he seems to believe in pragmatism. I love that quote from the sources. We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
That's such a key strategy, especially for resource-strapped towns, right? He plans to study successful strategies implemented in nearby towns and then adapt them locally rather than, spending limited resources on untested ideas. And this pragmatic approach is paired with a clear focus on infrastructure preparation. He uses a great analogy for capturing that lost spending. If you are praying for rain, you have to be prepared with an umbrella.
I like that.
The town needs the physical infrastructure and the readiness to actually receive new businesses when the economic climate shifts.
But is that focus, small business partnerships and infrastructure prep, is that enough to solve a problem the size of a $60 million leakage? Or does that require attracting a major industrial anchor or some huge external employer?
Well, that's the tension, isn't it? It's inherent in his vision. Silver seems to be betting on a more decentralized, trades-heavy recovery model, and that's where his background as a business owner really shines through. He emphasizes that while, college education is essential, the trades are just as important.
He specifically plans to partner with tradesmen like electricians, brick masons, HVAC technicians to groom youth as entered apprentices.
Yes. And he backs that idea up with a pretty potent economic truth, noting that a lot of trades are making more money than people with PhDs. This is a tangible, high-value career path he's proposing, designed to keep young people from leaving. It offers them professional opportunity right there in Enfield without, the immediate pressure of a 4-year college debt.
Okay, now, moving beyond the specific strategies, Silver's campaign seems to rest really heavily on collaboration and, a unique type of hope, which seems deeply rooted in his faith and community values.
Collaboration is definitely non-negotiable in his view, particularly for seizing those Tier 1 opportunities we mentioned. Silver's immediate priority, if elected, would be contacting leaders like the county commissioner, the economic development commissioner, the tourism commission. He wants to align all the Halifax County efforts so they can, in his words, rise as one.
So he's looking to eliminate that internal friction and maybe competition between towns or agencies.
Exactly. He even stresses the importance of local businesses supporting each other, cites the simple, actionable example of, buying plumbing supplies locally instead of driving all the way to Rocky Mount for them.
It's about building interdependence.
Okay, yeah, but let's be pragmatic for a second, as you said earlier. He has this deeply held belief, it seems, that if the town is simply flooded with love, hope, and charity, the rest, the businesses, the economic stability, the safety will just follow. How does a spiritual foundation actually attract financial investment? Is that the idea?
Well, that's the fascinating pivot he makes. He seems to argue that the structural problems are actually secondary to the community problems.
Yeah.
He sees historical separation, confusion, and just bickering as the root issue preventing unity. So his solution is profoundly simple: breaking bread together. He literally sees shared meals and conversation as the mechanism to overcome faults or skin color, allowing people to see each other as brothers and sisters.
So in his view, that human unified foundation is the necessary prerequisite for all the economic and civic renewal. That seems to be it. If people trust each other, they'll support local businesses, they'll collaborate on grants, they'll work side by side to fix infrastructure. It kind of shifts the burden of revitalization from just the government onto the unified community itself.
And that unity, then, is directly tied to his message to the young people, the ones who feel they have to leave Enfield. He tells them, find your passion. You don't have to leave Enfield to find that.
Yeah, but he goes further than just offering platitudes, which I think is important. He acknowledges that sometimes lost youth need a physical being to have a conversation with, not just abstract advice like you need to pray.
Right.
They need someone to actually take time with them, sit down, and genuinely explore what their desires are. That personal investment is critical to his approach.
It's this idea that leadership requires stepping outside his own comfort zone and really putting in the emotional labor to connect with the next generation. That feels like a powerful commitment from a candidate. And he sums up his pitch to the voters with a message rooted in his actions, not just promises. May the works that I have done and am doing speak for me.
Yeah, when we look at Silver's background, the military discipline, the concrete business acumen, and this call for radical community compassion, it all kind of merges into a holistic platform. It feels specifically designed to tackle the systemic challenges of a distressed Tier 1 community. He's providing both a hard strategy, like the train's focus and business incentives, and a soft strategy, like the unity and mindset shift.
Which brings us back to that state-level classification. We talked about how important that Tier 1 status is for attracting state aid, but the sources also noted that some academic assessments have actually criticized that very tier system.
They have, yeah. The sources suggest the calculation methods used by the state sometimes blur the real economic differences among the counties, which leads to categorizations that might be almost meaningless in terms of real on-the-ground distinctions.
Okay, so that raises a critical final thought for you, the listener, to consider. If that official designation is flawed, if the external incentive system is maybe unreliable, how much more does the intense, ground-up local civic leadership proposed by Tony Silver matter? The kind focused entirely on changing the internal mindset and aligning community collaboration, maybe more than dependence on external state funding.
It's a tough question. Enfield's future may hinge entirely on whether Silver's call for internal unity can generate enough self-reliance to overcome those systemic economic headwinds, regardless of the fluctuating state-level grants. It really highlights the enormous burden of responsibility placed on local leadership in these struggling communities across the country.
We really appreciate you sharing your sources with us for this incredibly insightful deep dive.